My name is Gil-Shuster, and I am the creator of the Ask an Israeli, Ask a Palestinian project. It's a project that goes out to the streets of Israel, in Palestine, and interviews regular, average people on the street. The idea is getting away from politics, what the politicians have to say, getting away from what the slogans and the propaganda has to say, and asking regular people, what do they think about different issues? How do I get my questions? People send them to me through email, mostly. Every so often, someone inspires me, like someone did just before this, to ask a very particular question because it maybe it'll enlighten people in some way. And that's really the goal. That's what was set out to do. So the project has certain rules that I created very early on and I've hopefully stuck to. The rules are as follows. Number one, questions are sent by viewers. Pretty much every question that I've ever done, other than one or two that I thought were just really funny, were sent to me by viewers. Often, the type of question that I would get would actually say more about the person asking that they had particular political views than what they wanted to know. So it was sort of like a gotcha question. Sort of like, how could you treat the Palestinians the way the Nazis treated the Jews? Things like that. Any question I'm given is fair game, because if somebody's asking it, if there's enough people asking it, it means that there are people out there who really believe that. And let's check if it's true. Is asking such a horrific, in my opinion, question to people in Israel, even Holocaust survivors, will that stand up? Will they be able to say what they think and how ridiculous that is? Or maybe I'll find out that they agree in some way. Who knows? Second question I already alluded to, any question can be asked. I've asked Israelis pretty much anything that will embarrass me. Palestinians are a little bit harder. You have to be much more tactful in the way you ask questions. Asking challenging questions about Islam, not really allowed. But in each case, when I did find a question that I think warrants an explanation, I'd find a way with my translator, who's Palestinian, to couch the question in some way that it wouldn't be automatically an offense to them. Third, the people who are answering are random. They really are random. I get this all the time. People tell me I'm anti-Israel, I'm pro-Israel, I'm anti-Palestinian, I'm pro-Palestinian. They think I'm actually going out and looking for very specific people who are going to make one side look good and the other side look foolish. Not true. I actually is random. I wander around the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and Haifa and Ariel, Ramallah, Nablus, and Hebron, and I just ask anybody who, to me, looks average. What does average mean? Maybe it's just in my head, but people I think who are mothers and fathers, people I think who work in regular jobs. I actually sort of avoid the far left or the far right if somebody sort of has that look to them, because I figure they're going to get that their narrative is sort of known in the media. And with Palestinians, I actually, probably 80% of the time, I actually have my translator choose the people. So anyone who's calling me anti-Palestinian, not true. All answers are included. I have a policy. People will say horrible things that I think make Israelis and Palestinians look horrible. And it's included. It has to be included. Everything. I only edit out the little bits of content, of non-content at the edges where they're giving their name and stuff like that. But everything is there. And what I think is really important is I try to ask targeted follow-up questions. Just asking somebody, do you believe in peace, is too simplistic. Because what I learned is how somebody understands the word peace, for example, will vary in every community, with every person, every individual. You have to ask follow-up questions. And often I'm asking follow-up questions. In my mind, there's somebody who's sitting there who's very right-wing or left-wing or anti-this or pro-that. And I think, what would they want to ask? What would they want to ask from this individual? And so I try to ask from that perspective. And I really try that in each video, there's a variety. That I'm not just taking what somebody says, even if I agree with it, at face value. I ask a more challenging question, partially to also see can they stand up to, if I challenge their worldview and say, is that fair? Is that a good thing? Is, anything like that? Can they stand up to the scrutiny? And so I think that's important to do. Gets me in a lot of trouble, but it's important to do. My own addition to this is I put in every video, I'm allowed to make sarcastic comments. It's what keeps me sane. Yes, I'm a human being. Sometimes people say horrible things, and it hurts me. So sometimes it just slips out, and that's part of the magic of what the videos are about. How did this all start? I studied conflict studies in Canada, did a master's in conflict studies. I had lived in Israel for years before. I studied conflict studies because I wanted to understand, I wanted to put a framework around what I experienced. I had never met a Palestinian, really, or never had a meaningful conversation with a Palestinian, but I wanted to understand how Israelis seem to understand the conflict itself through psychological approaches, political approaches, that sort of thing. Moving to a different country is always difficult. It was very hard to find a job. So for the first year or two, I was unemployed, doing partial work here and there. And I found myself on the internet in those ridiculous forums on Facebook, arguing with people. And I don't know why I did it, and I won't do it anymore. But I would get into arguments with people who would claim things about Israel and about Palestinians that, or at least about Israel, I didn't match anything that I had experienced. I'd lived in Israel already at this point for 15 years, 17 years. It didn't match the people I knew. It didn't match the reality that I knew. And I did not live, only at this point I started living in Tel Aviv, and before that I was always living on small moshavs or in small towns or in all kinds of places that gave me more of an opportunity to learn what Israelis were really like. Then it would get into these arguments, and it seemed to me that people would say, yes, but I have proof, and they would post a video. And they were sure that this video showed that they were right and I was wrong, and it sort of annoyed me that where would they find these people who were so fringe and had such odd opinions? It didn't match the reality that I knew. And at one point, I just kept insisting, and this woman, who actually was Canadian, French-Canadian, said, what are you going to go do? You're going to go out and ask each individual what their opinion is? And I thought, wow, that's actually a really good idea. I have a video camera. I live in central Tel Aviv. I could just walk out my door and show people the conversations I get into every day. So that's what I did. I got a question from somebody. I went to the guy who sells me vegetables. I went to the guy who sells milk and bread. I asked the local hummus guy. I asked teenagers on the street. I asked old taxi drivers. And at the beginning, I had no clue what I was doing. I was doing it with iMovie on iMac, and I'd never used it. I put them together, and I saw something really powerful. That people were able to speak in their own voice. They were able to give their opinion without a politician giving spin. And when people speak in their own voices, it's usually complex and nuanced and much more complicated than you would think than politicians speak or media speaks. And I thought, this is really powerful. I'm going to keep this up. So I went a couple of months later. We decided we're going to go to Bethlehem. I knew a Palestinian guy, and he was going to take me, and we asked questions there. And that's what started it. And I just thought, this is really powerful. The original purpose was actually to sort of show what Israelis and Palestinians think, which is still the purpose still today. But in my mind, as someone who had studied conflict resolution, I was hoping this would be a way of making peace, and which some people do interpret the videos that way. That's not actually currently the intention. And what I found is that the problem was both sides were so far apart and the conversations were so different. There might as well be different conflicts on different opposite sides of the world, and that they're not going to listen to each other. They're just too angry. They're too frustrated. They're too stuck in their own narrative. And I thought, well, okay, but what I can do with this is at least show that narrative. And if anyone is ever interested, if anyone wants to know what do Palestinians think who are Israeli, or Palestinians who want to know what Israelis think, at least then they have the opportunity. It's out there. It's on YouTube. It's easy to access. And that's what kept me going. And every so often I get messages. I get a lot of hate mail, tons of hate mail. But I get a lot of messages from Israelis, Palestinians, Egyptians, Pakistanis, all over the world saying, thank you for showing me something different. And that keeps me going, because underneath it all, what media tells us, what politicians tell us is one layer. And truthfully, at least the politicians are the ones who have to make the decisions in the end about what's going to happen. But what the people think is much more important to me. Because if anyone signs an agreement, and it doesn't matter what the agreement is between the two sides, the people have to keep it in place. and knowing and not being surprised like I was under Oslo at the reaction from both sides, I think is important. I would rather just be prepared and understand what the raw truth of both sides are. So the goal today is really just to keep people thinking, let people know what the different sides know about each other in this sense. Hopefully allow people to think about their own narratives. I really, part of it is a mirror. I'm putting up a mirror to Israeli society and to Palestinian society and my own beliefs of hearing someone who you would agree with and thinking, oh, really? I sound that way? Wow, okay. Maybe maybe I need to rethink it, or maybe it is the right thing. I'm hoping, just because I hear something that I don't agree with, it doesn't mean, and I know this for a fact, people watch the same video, and things that I cringe at, they think are great, and things that I think are great, they cringe. It is what it is. It's part of conflict. It's part of understanding what conflict is, and I hope it can contribute in some way to the discussion about what is going on here. What can you, the viewers, learn from this? Regardless of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, anyone, and I was kind of surprised about that no one else has copied me, anyone can do this. You can take your cell phones, your iPhones, and go out there and just ask people questions. It's a camera, cost me $300. The camera I had before this was $150. Anybody can do this. All you need is a cell phone or a camera and some way of editing it and putting it together. I would ask if anyone, and I hope people do this. I actually sort of thought at the beginning that maybe I'll find people, and every so often somebody does reach out to me from Iraq or from This Happened, or from Egypt and said, or Morocco, and said, I want to do the same thing as you're doing. And in the end they didn't, because they live in illiberal societies that they can get in a lot of trouble, which is too bad. But I hope somebody really does this, whether it's in the Middle East or anywhere else. And all I would ask is that you really try to follow the rules, other than me being sarcastic and kind of an ass sometimes. But follow the rules of really trying to be random, really try to be inclusive of everybody, of asking all ages, all socioeconomic levels, all religions, and not being too judgmental. So at least the people around the world can then understand the conflicts or the situations that they find themselves in. And I think that would be great. If somebody else wants to take this idea, I'm very happy to hand over the baton. Thank you.